Over 7 million different animals inhabit our planet.
And that's just that they've been declared functionally extinct in the wild by the Australian Koala Foundation.
What can they teach us?
And researchers or evolutionary experts think the reason their pouch opens towards the bottom, it might be an adaptation from their prehistoric cousin, the wombat.
Many species are in crisis and need your help. Join the movement at allcreaturespod.com.
Welcome to the All Creatures Podcast. This is Chris.
And I'm Angie.
Big week. We're going down under, Angie. We're going back down under. I've been waiting for this one.
I love it there. It's my home away from home, even though I've never been. But we need to go quite clearly because we love ourselves some Australian animals.
They are so
and the people.
unique.
The people are pretty awesome too. We've had some really awesome emails recently
from
some of our supporters and friends down in Australia.
Yeah, I got send out a cheers to Bailey out in Perth. So let's go the West Coast, then cross the continent all the way to Lee in Sydney, and then we'll go down and say hi to Googs down in Tasmania. So, and we have a bunch in between. Nikki from Adelaide. So there's another fan, and we love our Aussies.
And even more so, we love koalas.
Yes.
I just joked with Chris. I was like, so I think we can just sum up the podcast in 5 seconds and say they are the cutest.
They're
charming,
iconic. We're done.
Lovely animal, and we're out.
No, there's so much physiology.
Well,
Much.
absolutely. I went into the weeds this week about some fascinating physiology. And so hopefully by the end of the podcast, of course you already love koalas because they're cute and fuzzy and they're just charming as can be. But you're going to learn a lot about their physiology and conservation. We've got to talk a lot of conservation this week, Chris. Koalas have been in the news.
It's very timely. Very timely. Yep.
Not in a good way as far as their numbers. So we're going to talk a lot about that. And of course, just some radical physiology since they are a boreal, marsupial herbivore. So I had a lot of fun joking out about their physiology. And
I knew you would. When reading some of this stuff, especially when we get to nutrition and all that, I knew you would just love doing the research this week on them. The thing that you were talking about, Angie, in the news, and that's just that they've been declared functionally extinct in the wild by the Australian Koala Foundation. Now they're reporting that, or warning really, that there's only 80,000 koalas left on the continent. They predict maybe as low as 43,000. And basically, and we're going to talk a little bit here in a minute what functionally extinct means, but they are really screaming that Australia is not doing enough to support the koala. Mm-hmm. Now, to be fair, it's an election year, so they're really beating the drum. But I think a lot of people agree. I think a lot of people agree. Vote with your
dollar. Vote to save the environment.
Yeah, I think a lot of people agree the Australian government needs to do more to protect their natural spaces, like from the Great Barrier Reef all the way out to Bailey and Perth, and everything in between. And
if you really think about it, and we're going to talk about populations and where they're found, but Australia is a huge continent, and the populations, as Chris mentioned, are spread out. So on the high end, even there are only 80,000 koalas left. That's not a very big number.
No, it's not. And it's, we'll get to it. Now, a couple housekeeping notes, Angie. Very excited. You've been helping me get this organized for a long time. This has been going on for like 3 or 4 months.
It's a big one.
This Thursday, I got to go to my favorite zoo on earth, where I grew up as a kid, that instilled all of this in me, these values of saving animals and being a conservationist and conservation message. So I got to go to actually the San Diego Zoo, go back home.
The world famous San Diego Zoo,
world famous,
to be correct.
Yes. And the stuff they do is so amazing. It's so amazing what they do for, San Diego global wildlife. And I got to interview the koala team. So I got to sit down with 3 of their koala keepers and talk about not so much the day-to-day keeping the koalas, but what is San Diego doing? What is San Diego Zoo doing for not only the koalas, but animals around the globe? And they are one of the leaders in conservation.
Sure.
I was so excited. I was so excited.
Yeah, no, San Diego rocks. I sat down with a mentor / hero of mine this past week. He was in town for a conference. He's a rhino specialist out of San Diego Zoo, the wildlife park there. And he's amazing. They do amazing work. He was telling about some of the stuff they're doing in South Africa to help conserve rhinos and to learn more about them and to try to figure out how to better keep them under human care, because obviously their numbers are declining. And yeah, it's incredible. It's so funny. I was like, oh yes, I would definitely move out to, not that he didn't ask me about a job. He didn't offer me a job. He didn't even hint that they were hiring. In fact, one job, he's like, well, that one you probably wouldn't even be qualified for. So no, but I was still like, oh, I'd move there. I would move there in a heartbeat. Yes, no problem. Hands down.
I would support that hands down. I would drive out to Florida, load up the truck. You and John take the kids in your car, and I'll drive your truck to San Diego. I would support that in a heartbeat.
I know. It's
heartbeat.
Yeah. They're a great organization and great people coming out of there, and really cool animals. And I'm very excited for this interview because as a former keeper, it's so important to hear all sorts of different perspectives. And I think our interviews have done a great job of being pretty well-rounded, and a lot of our listeners have helped encourage us to reach outside the box and interview more different types of animal experts. So be looking for that in the months to come. But in the meantime, hearing from a CEO of an organization or a field conservation knee-deep in muck out in Sumatra to a keeper that is keepers of Noah's Ark, basically, and gets to know these animals and their personality, which I've heard koalas have really big personalities.
Very much.
So getting to hear their behind the scenes is going to be really cool. So I'm excited about that interview.
It was amazing. They actually, I think all 3 of them, if I remember correctly, went to Australia to do some field work. So San Diego supports that with their keepers. Like, you went to the wrong zoo, Angie. I'm sorry. Lincoln Park's great. We love them. We love Chicago.
No, Lincoln Park Zoo. That's my heart. You're talking about my alma mater. They sent me to Africa. So, I mean, Africa, Australia.
That's true. They did. Okay. Fine.
Yes.
Fine.
So,
well, I have to ask Alicia at Brookfield to see what she thinks. You know?
I know. Right.
Yeah.
So, no, but I think it goes to point out that there's a lot of really awesome zoos that support conservation, as we've shown and talked about in some of our interviews, and we'll be doing more here in the future. They support continuing education and field conservation work heavily, and the keeper staff gets to be involved. So it's
they do, and Dr. Erin Curry, one of my good friends, that Cincinnati Zoo, she takes people up to the Arctic to look at polar bears and study polar bears and stuff. So yeah, the zoos are incredible interview. Please enjoy it. I actually snuck back down to San Diego wearing my San Diego Zoo t-shirt that I bought myself. And I got to walk around again this past weekend. And I love it. Memories as that little 5-year-old kid running up and down Bear Canyon, going, oh my gosh, Dad, look at this. That's how
it all starts. Yeah. That's the goal, right? We all started somewhere for sure.
Yeah. Well, and just real quick, on Patreon, please check us out on Patreon. Follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook. We have a big species coming next week. It's from the ocean. This is the only hint I'll give you. Dark on top, light underneath.
That's not a very good hint.
That's like every species in the ocean.
Yeah.
There you go.
But fair enough. Join Patreon, darn it, or else you'll never know.
So we'll drop that episode next week. And then obviously conservation news. I mean, Angie, so much coming out. I got to talk about Botswana. Just to throw this out there for now, and we'll address this later. But Botswana just lifted the trophy hunting ban on elephants. The new president came in. I thought Botswana was leading the world in ecotourism.
It is. It's really, you're bringing me down, Chris. Come on.
Okay.
Talk about koalas.
All right. Back to koalas. Well, here you go. What does functionally extinct mean?
Right.
So
that's a great question. I had to do my own research to kind of wrap my head around what that means and why I should care. Besides the fact that, of course, I care. I'm a conservationist. But why should other people care and take note of that? And what does it mean?
Yeah, and we know of a lot of species that are functionally extinct. I mean, Sumatran rhino. I mean, look at these species, critically low numbers that that they are functionally extinct. But the koalas are heading that way. And basically, the way they define it is whose population's so low that it doesn't affect the ecosystem much anymore. They've lost so much habitat that their fate's sealed. It's like they're not going to make it. Or really a small population that you start to see a lot of inbreeding and really influences their future viability. So when we talk about 40 to 80,000 koala, and like Angie said, the range is so huge that these small pockets of koala, there are small pockets of koala that are definitely functionally extinct. They can't breed. They're dying out. That's it. There's no more generations to come. That they can't do it, and so they're going to die out in that area. Now, why is this happening in Australia? And please, any of our Aussie friends, if we misstate anything in this episode, and I'm not saying the way we say things. G'day, mate. We that's fine with our American accents.
On our horrible American accents.
But anything that might be a misstatement, please correct us. Post it on Instagram or Facebook. But from what I was reading, obviously it's human driven. The climate crisis in the world has had a huge effect on Australia. They're suffering from severe droughts, periodic droughts. I think right now they're not in a drought. I could be wrong. I read that they had a really number of years of horrific drought, major fires. We'll talk a little bit about eucalyptus, how those things are just like the candles, right? They just light up. They blow up. I mean, there's just that oil. So had some horrific fire seasons. Koalas can't outrun that. I mean, they're toast. Literally, it's really sad. So that's a major risk. They're losing a lot of their native lands. So facing a lot of pressure that we're going to kind of tie up at the end. But before we get there, here's a question I have for you, Angie. And I know you have a question for me that I'm not sure the answer of yet. But my question is koala really a bear? Because you hear koala bear.
Yes.
Right? Is it Ursidae?
That is a great question. And it's something we're definitely going to clear up as we move into evolution. You said you had a great evolution prepared for us, because I was thinking, is this our first marsupial we've covered?
Now. Here you go. I should be going there soon. I'm trying to go there in July.
Yes, I can guess this. That's a Tasmanian devil.
Not the tiger?
I guessed it the first time. No, not the
not
tiger.
The Tasmanian tiger.
Devil, not the Tassie tiger. The Tasmanian devil. And I guessed it from that noise. So that's how in sync you and I are, for the record. That's why we're great podcast mates.
Oh, I can't wait to find them. I cannot
because
wait to find
I
them
ask
in the wild.
Goofy questions because I'm tired and I'm a busy mom. And then you make weird noises at me and I know what the answer is. That's why we're partners.
I want to be sleeping in Tasmania and hear that and wake up to that. I will call you right away. I don't care. I'll be in the world. I'll pull up, because this is what's so great about technology now. And I'll call up Angie and say, "Oh my God, listen to this."
I'll be so happy. I'll love it. But yeah, so the evolution's coming up is going to be awesome. We have covered a marsupial with the Tasmanian devil, but this is definitely a lot of differences, especially when it comes to nutrition too, as well. And in preparing and doing all the reading about their diets and the eucalyptus, because it is that simple, but it's also not that simple. And we'll get into that when we get to nutrition. But Chris, do you think koalas smell like eucalyptus cough drops?
I don't know.
They smell like, because eucalyptus is a very popular aromatherapy, right? I know my dad used to use it in the shower to help clear his sinuses and things like that. So what do you think? That's all they eat. So Stay tuned
Maybe.
with us.
I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. Some of the things I know that they do, I think they're a little stinky, but maybe not. Maybe they do smell like eucalyptus drops.
We'll find out. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, koalas, obviously very iconic in Australia. They have this thick, woolly fur coat, which acts like a raincoat when it rains, and really, it protects them in both high and low temperatures. Varies from typically koalas. We think, I don't know, in the States, from what I've seen, gray coats with some white around the face and the underbelly, but they can be brown or light brown.
Sure. Yeah, even up to chocolate brown, I read.
Yeah. And the size of them, 33 inches long, weigh up to 20 pounds. So that's not huge, obviously. And you see people, anybody's seen a koala or people holding koalas, they're the size of your upper body, right? I mean, roughly.
Yeah. I mean, they're not that big, but they're definitely a stocky animal with a large head. And they basically have a vestigial or non-existent tail. So you don't think of them to have a tail. I think what's really, for me, very iconic for them are their round, big, fluffy ears. So cute. And then the nose, they have a long spoon-shaped, almost leathery, dark brown, if not black nose with these tiny little eyes. And they're just, they're like a Wookiee, right? I mean, I've watched enough Star Wars. John will be proud of me.
Or they look like the Ewoks, kind of like an Ewok. Almost.
Oh, shoot. It's not a Wookiee. Darn it. He won't be proud of me. Ewoks. I think I was thinking about Ewoks.
Me and John are the Star Wars
Edit that
nerds.
out. Edit that out. What's a Wookiee? Then?
It's the big one.
Oh, yeah. No.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, my gosh. Anybody who loves Star Wars is going to not listen to the podcast anymore. Change that. Xander has an Ewok from our buddy Miss Allison. Allison got him an Ewok. So, just
I think the orangutans are more like Wookiees to an extent.
Fair enough. Okay. All right. I need like a Star Wars cheat sheet because I try to be cool and do all the analogies.
Think anybody's going to fault you for not being a Star Wars nerd like John and I. It's okay. It's quite okay.
And I can't believe I just said I'm trying to be cool and do Star Wars analogies because, like, honestly, that's not cool. It's not really cool, right?
No, not our age range. No. Oh my goodness. So the range, pretty much all of Eastern Australia, Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, some in South Australia. They, most abundant on the central north coast of New South Wales and the southeast corner of Queensland. But again, these urban centers, that's where most of the urban population is in Australia, is on the East Coast. Because Central Australia is just
forget
bush.
About it. Yeah,
which I cannot wait to get to one day. And then you have Perth way out there in Western Australia, so, and then, obviously people in between.
That'd be beautiful though. I would still love it.
Yeah, definitely go down under. Everybody go down under, go support them. And then for those that are voting for wildlife, vote early and vote often, right? Is what you say in the States.
Yes. Vote for wildlife.
I'm not promoting, breaking the law. I'm not broken the law. Just get your friends to vote for wildlife. But so they, pretty spread out. But the thing that was interesting about this assessment from the Australia Koala Foundation is of the 128 known habitats, they're only finding koalas in 41 of them. So that is a concern. That is a big concern. Yeah, big concern.
And I think it's been stated, but just to restate it, is that koalas are arboreal, so fancy word for live in trees. So they spend their whole life on trees. We'll talk about a little bit in behavior. They barely come to the ground. And of course, they prefer to hang out in the branches of eucalyptus trees. So they need these eucalyptus forests in order to survive. And anybody who lives in an urban area, I lived in Chicago and even in Florida where I live now, development just keeps, paving paradise, if you will. There's like a song about it, a 90s song about it. And it's just, the trees just keep coming down in large pockets of it. So, and that's here in the US, of course. And I imagine it's very similar in other places. And so if you live in trees, especially and as we'll talk about when we get to nutrition, and you're kind of picky about the types of trees that you live in because you've evolved, which Chris will talk about in evolution, to pretty much only eat one dominant species, being the eucalyptus tree, you need these forest patches around.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it's, their ecological role in eating these trees, it's looking at what koalas do. They consume
why should
those
we love them
trees.
besides the fact that they're Australia's national symbol, basically, and they're cute as all get out.
Yeah, I mean they do a lot. They consume a lot of this biomass in the Australian environment. Their droppings on the forest floor has a huge effect on the forest nutrient cycle. It's just they're affecting. One of the things I didn't even think about, they're up there consuming, a large amount, which we'll get to nutrition, a large amount of leaf matter. So that is allowing solar energy. I didn't even think about this. Solar energy to permeate through the trees, hitting the ground, which affects the flora and soil fauna and the microbes in the soil. And so when we start talking about conservation and biodiversity, and I've been pushing it on Instagram, I have an awesome interview coming in a couple of weeks talking about from the soil up, and I always say from the air down too, all in between. But we have to start looking at not just the megafauna. We have to look at the microfauna, the microbes, and that all is critical to a healthy ecosystem. So koalas are critical to the Australian bush or outback
the
there
woodlands. The woodlands area.
In Eastern Australia. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. They're huge to it. They're huge.
And there's already been a very successful push to save these guys from extinction once.
Mm-hmm. No, they were almost completely wiped out in the 1900s. I was kind of saving this for the end, but I'll go here now. That over 10 million, they're estimating up to 10 million koalas were killed in the early 1900s for their pelts.
Think about that number.
10 million. And the pelts, guess where a lot of them went?
Europe.
And here, the USA.
Oh, of course.
Honestly, yeah, USA. So they think the numbers got down, especially in the state of Victoria, they were down to less than 1,000, maybe a few hundred. So in each part of their range, they were severely depleted, down to probably just a few thousand. And good old USA, I should probably play the Star Spangled Banner again. I won't, but I should play the Australian national anthem. But President Hoover, one of the good things he did, I guess, here in the United States is he banned the import.
Besides the dam?
Yeah, the Hoover Dam was good too. Okay. Thank you.
Was it? Is it? Was it? I don't know.
I think so.
You're the historian buff.
Sure, I'll say yes. But Hoover was known as not exactly one of our best presidents because the Depression. But he did ban
that little thing.
He did ban the pelts coming into the U.S. and then that just the market crashed, and so they stopped killing them. But
isn't that interesting? Yeah. Botswana. Yeah, how that works.
I know. Boycott Botswana till that guy gets makes me sick. All right, Angie, this is going to be a 5-hour podcast. It's not, people. Don't hang up. Don't stop listening because the koalas are awesome. But I really dorked out on evolution because Australian evolution is just, I learned a lot.
It's so different. It's so unique. And just another reason too, just a quick pitch about why I care about them, besides everything else we've talked about, is koalas evolved to live on the Australia continent. They've been there forever. Chris is going to sum it up in a 2-minute
we'll see. Yep.
or so
we'll try.
thing, but you're going to learn a lot. You're going to love it. But they've been there for forever. And Australia's indigenous people have depicted them in myths, in cave art for a millennia. Mm-hmm. So they've been the symbol of Australia. Obviously, now they're one of the main iconic animals from Australia. But historically, for a millennia, they've been important to the culture.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah, they're critical. I mean,
we should care. We need to save these guys.
Yes.
They're incredible. Yeah.
Please, Australia, save your koalas. Please tell us what to do. We'll do it.
Yes. Tell us Americans how we can help too.
Yeah.
I know we seem far away, so
yeah.
we got to figure that out.
Yeah. We got election coming up at some point too. All right. The groups of mammals. Do you remember the monotreme that we covered?
I do. The platypus.
Yes. So
I'm on fire tonight.
Good.
It was a 3-day weekend over here. I got extra sleep.
Yes. Yeah, you had fun with the kids.
Watch out, world.
Yeah, the weather's turning. So yeah, the monotremes, the egg-laying mammals, so the platypus and the echidnas. Then you have the Etherean animals, which are mammals, which is Angie, me, whales, the ones that placental mammals, that's where we came from. Then you have the marsupials, so the kangaroos, koalas, possums, all of that, and they're the ones that have the pouches. So we said the Tassie devils, things like that. Long time ago, this really breaking out the monotremes, just a quick review, broke off 166 million years ago. I mean, a time frame you can't even think about. Marsupials and the Eutherians broke off or split off about 148 million years ago. So this is around the time of dinosaurs, people. T-Rex. So I don't even think T-Rex was around 148 million years ago. It was some other animal. T-Rex was the one that was like 50, 60 million years ago. So long time ago is when these animals started evolving. Now, it's so much fun, Angie. I'm such a dork. The marsupials are just, they're amazing. So here you had you broke off over 100 million years ago. Do you know what continent marsupials evolved on? Why is
Ooh.
Australia? No. I mean, that's where they live. But
that's what I would guess.
No. Why is everything North America?
Everything. That's what okay.
What
Can
the
I go
heck?
back? That's actually because the answer usually is North America. And we have marsupials, a marsupial here that we still need to cover, the possum. So yeah, that would have been my guess, but I felt like you peer pressured me into Australia.
But why? I have to figure this out.
Not because I know anything. No. It's always randomly North America.
It is. Why? So, why is like rhinos evolved here, horses evolved here, all of these major classes of mammals? I just don't get it. I've got to go back and do the research and dork out on this, because there must have been something about this part of the world when the meteor hit. Like, because I was thinking, the Yucatan Peninsula is where it blew up 60 million years ago.
Right.
Did it just mean that ecosystem recovered quicker than, say, other parts of the world that died off slowly? I don't know.
Oh, that's actually an interesting theory.
I don't know. Like, it blows my mind why North America just had this explosion in mammals. All right. So this is what's really interesting. So the marsupials evolved in North America, then migrated to South America. Now, I know we said in Tassie devils.
That makes sense. Okay.
That there's some debate, but I think the general consensus is this is what really drove me, like, wowed me. They migrated to South America to Antarctica.
Oh, that is
so
deep.
I'm like, what?
South. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they go into Antarctica, and I'm like, okay, was that frozen? It wasn't.
Right. What did it look like? Oh, it wasn't. Okay.
It wasn't. And I think that's part of why there's still debate, because, you don't have archaeologists or paleontologists or whoever studies this stuff down in Antarctica digging for fossils.
I just read a really cool paleontologist book to Xander and Zach tonight. And it was cool. It was naming a lot of the people that got started finding different fossils and specimens. And one of them was actually Mary Annings, a woman. It was the first time I heard about this woman paleontologist and some of her findings over there in, I believe, London. So yeah, it was just really, really interesting. And it gave me a quick history on paleontology. And who knows, maybe Xander will be the first one to be like, I'm going to go down to Antarctica
and dig up fossils.
Yeah.
which hey, that would be amazing, because it's probably, but at that point, you're talking tens of million years ago, it was a vibrant continent. They have found some fossils on it. And what was interesting was Australia was part of the Antarctic continent. So the marsupials
Gotcha. Okay, they just zipped on
moved
over.
into there. And then about 55 million years ago is when Australia started moving north.
Gotcha.
And so it broke off. And then the marsupials became isolated. Then you had probably a frozen bunch of animals once it got super cold over millions of years. But they eventually, that whole biome changed at the South Pole. So very, very interesting. They've found in Australia fossils dating back 25 million years ago of koala.
Wow. Cool.
And they think the last really major evolution change in koalas happened about 15 million years ago, which is interesting. This is why I love this natural history. They called it the ice house phase. And so about 15 million years ago, the Earth got colder, the normal, up and down. Now, this is normal, not like today where it's rapid. This is over thousands of years. It got colder. So the rainforests, all that stuff in Australia started to die off, but eucalyptus took off. It was perfect for that environment. So,
except for that it's poisonous to most animals. So
yes,
there's that.
Yeah, but that's why koalas thrived. So 15 million years ago, this is like the last major shift in koala evolution. Now, the koala's closest relative is actually the wombat. Mm-hmm. So I know
another awesome critter we need to cover.
Them are the qualls. I mean, there's so many. There's so many. Ugh, there's so many cool ones down there. Now, just finally, because again, this would be a 5-hour podcast if I really got into it. The species name of the koala is Phascolarctos cinereus. So Phascolarctos cinereus.
Very good. A+.
Yeah. Now, there is debate on subspecies.
Correct.
And there's really no general consensus yet. And again, go back a few pods. We talk about why, because scientists like to argue sometimes. No, it went to DNA and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot more technologies now to date or to assess things a little bit differently.
Yeah, than just looking at them. But they, if they're the 3 subspecies that they kind of think might be the Queensland koala, New South Wales koala, or Victorian koala, but there's not a consensus on that yet. Okay, this one I've been dying to get to you. Okay. The most surprising marsupial from Australia. Can you guess? I'll cry if you know this.
Most surprising, like what's surprising about it?
You would not think it was a marsupial. You would not think it to be a marsupial.
Is it an animal I know about though? Like I've heard of it?
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe.
You might see it one day. An animal that is a marsupial and you'd be like, what?
I love this game. This is the best part of the podcast for me. I love puzzles and crosswords and all that. Sudoku. Can I have a hint?
When I find it, I'll be famous.
The Tasmanian tiger?
Yes.
Oh, that's why we're partners.
Yes.
That is bizarre. You're right.
Oh my God. Oh.
Weird.
How is the Tassie tiger, which is extinct, people, it went extinct in the early 20th century. But some people think it might still be roaming in the wilds of Australia. I don't know. And I joke about finding it. But they had pouches. They're marsupials. They're carnivorous marsupials.
What?
Yes. So the females, like the Tassie devils, has a rear-facing pouch. Then listen to this. The males have a pouch too to suck up their testicles to protect them. So if you get in a fight, maybe that's what they bite. I don't know.
Oh
my
gosh.
Both males and females had them. And I was like, are you kidding me? The Tasmanian tiger is a marsupial. It's carnivorous marsupial. I was like, wow. Again, why I love this podcast. Yeah. There you go. Now we can end it.
I was going to say, that's mind blown.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I find it again, I'm going to go out there, me and Lee and Bailey and all of us are going to go out and look for Tassie tigers. And
crazy.
Find them in the outback somewhere.
Yeah.
All right. So koalas, again, I think the things we must think about as conservation, average lifespan is about 10 to 12 years. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons they don't live as long is, and because they don't, you think about it, they're up in the trees, they're usually generally protected. I mean, the predators that, I will say this real quick, because I know once I get on nutrition, you're going to go for an hour. The dingoes,
me
there are
so well.
raptors. Yeah, the raptors, and then the predatory owl are their natural predators. But, one of the major reasons they don't live as long is because eating this eucalyptus wears down their teeth. Teeth don't regrow. And so they end up just starving to death because they can't eat anymore.
And yeah, Chris, under human care, they can live almost double, if not longer. The oldest koala female was 23, and she lived at the Lone Pine Sanctuary in Queensland. Her name was Sarah. And then the oldest male lived to be 22. His name was Tam Tam, and he lived in a zoo in Tokyo. So it's double the life expectancy in the wild.
In the wild, yeah. And males are bucks, females are does, and the babies are
joeys.
And a couple other fun things. Their body temperature tends to be a little bit lower, 97 degrees Fahrenheit, 36.6 degrees Celsius, just due to their low metabolic rate. We're getting nutrition, Angie. Don't go yet. I know you're excited. They, their hands have 5 digits, so they can grip and live in the trees. And this blew me away too. And I bet you our Aussies knew this, but I did not know this. Koalas have fingerprints. Like what? Do you know the species that have fingerprints? Here you go. I'll put you on the spot.
Well, definitely gorillas and chimpanzees.
Yeah, there you go. Bing, bing, bing. Okay. Yeah, smart. Dr. Angie's in the house. Yeah, and us. And then koalas.
Do you want me to tell you the part of the dermal layer where fingerprints come from?
No.
Because I can go there.
You want to.
It's so funny how life all coordinates itself and the stars align.
Yeah.
I just learned this in my physiology class. We're talking about the integumentary system, which is the skin. And the dermal papillae, which is basically the layer between your epidermis and your dermis, the deep part. It looks like a wave. And that's called the dermal papillae. And it's basically how you can separate, if you're looking under a microscope, besides cell shape and layers, it's how you can separate the epidermis from the dermis. And of course, they have different functions, yada blada. But the dermal papillae layer and the epidermal ridges in between them are different on everybody. And that's your fingerprint.
Why? Why do we all have different fingerprints?
Well, now you're just getting deep. Now you're getting too deep. I just teach it. This isn't physiology philosophical class. This isn't what it'd be like physiology philosophy.
Okay. How about this? What do fingerprints do?
Physiology I can't say it. It's too many P's.
Philosophical.
Physiology.
Philosophical
physiology. There,
physiology.
I got it. Oh my goodness.
So why do we have fingerprints? What do you think? Why? What do they do?
I don't think they do anything. I think they're. I think it's just that everybody's.
Well, I think those ridges help us grip too, don't you think?
Sure, and I just think that the body is super. I just think it might be really sloppy.
It could be. It probably is.
But we don't know the answer. But I do think that these ridges, they just for everybody might be because they really are. It's like a wave, and so everybody's going to have different size fingers, a little bit in shapes, and so it's just going to lay down the epidermal ridges or the dermal papillae layer is going to lay down a little different on everybody. But I don't know.
I will say this. Like when you're in water and you start to get all the folds, that is an evolutionary adaptation to being able to grip in water, so things don't slip. So our fingers, you get those folds in your feet and your hands.
Oh,
so
okay. Well, that might be why it happens.
Maybe. I don't know.
No, I just teach.
Let's get a fingerprint expert.
I know. I just teach the physiology of it is that because your cells, like with salt water and things like that, the water in your cells basically
dehydrates.
They want to move towards the solutes. They want to move out of the cell into the interstitial fluid, and therefore your cells shrink down, and so therefore you get pruny. But that's all about chemistry and things like that.
Yeah.
So that's the chemistry behind it, but why? Yeah. I don't know.
Helps us grip. Helps you grip.
I like it.
All right. So what other cool facts? Their pouches are sideways, upside down, upside up,
inside out and backwards. No.
Yeah.
No. Well, so most marsupials, we're all familiar with the kangaroo, and we will cover them. I actually got to work with kangaroos back in the day. But so the typical kangaroo, if you think about it, with a joey sticking its head out, they have a pouch that opens upwards towards the mama's head. But koalas are different, and they have a pouch that opens towards their hind legs. And researchers or evolutionary experts think the reason their pouch opens towards the bottom, it might be an adaptation from their prehistoric cousin, the wombat, who lives on the ground and digs a lot in the dirt. And so you don't want dirt to get in the pouch, especially when there's joeys in there. And so obviously koalas went from the ground and evolved up into the trees to get that niche of eucalyptus leaves, but their pouch is still facing basically backwards, if you will. And then just to add to their temperature regulation, koalas will often lick themselves, and it's because they don't have any sweat glands. So it's just they cool themselves through evaporation, through licking themselves. And then also by hugging trees. Koalas are a native tree hugger, literally and figuratively, right?
So they should be that should be the animal on a tree hugger. Like we should make, there has to be a tree hugger shirt out there that has a koala. So
there should be. If not, somebody make that.
Nature's first tree hugger.
Seriously, but they do it to cool themselves. And so scientists have used thermal cameras to watch the koalas that are just hanging out in the trees, and have seen that when the weather's warm, they move to the lower parts of the trees and press themselves against it, gave it a big hug, and trying to fit their bottoms into the coolest spot. So yeah.
Okay. So makes sense. Makes sense. No, and one of the last cool facts I have is these things sleep a lot. I guess that goes into behavior, which we'll get to, but they sleep like 18 hours on average per day because their diet that we've talked about is eucalyptus. So if you go back to the people that, are fans that have listened to all the podcasts and listened to the panda episode, we talk a lot about this carnivorous bear that just eats bamboo. It has the digestive system of its cousin, the brown bear, the grizzly that we just covered a couple weeks ago.
Carnivore.
But it eats bamboo, or omnivore, but eats bamboo, and it's just, there's no nutrients in there. It's just so low in nutrients. So eucalyptus is very, very similar. So a koala is not getting the nutrients to be very active. So when I was walking at the zoo this weekend around the koala exhibit in preparation for this podcast, they all were sleeping. Because that's what they do. That's what carnivores do to conserve energy. That's what koalas do. That's what pandas do, because there are not a lot of nutrients. Now, Angie has said eucalyptus are very toxic, but I think Angie's, before she gets running with it, I do want to say that they can tolerate this toxin. Now, just real quick to dork out on eucalyptus, because I did read this. I was very curious, and this week on Instagram, I'm going to be posting some stuff about it because we have a ton of eucalyptus in California, a ton. And I grew up around eucalyptus. Eucalyptus is native to Australia, around Australia. I think there's some species in some of like Indonesia or something, but they are not naturally found outside of Australia. Good old humans a long time ago said, hey, this is a great idea. Let's bring this plant over and plant it here. And in Europe and other parts. So eucalyptus, they brought eucalyptus to California as, hopefully they were hoping it would turn into something for wood, a wood product, because it grows so well. Nope, it's terrible wood product. They have to mature to be like 100 years old before you cut them down to make any sort of wood out of them. So it's a big wah-wah. The other problem is it goes up like I'm going to say some bad words, a Roman candle. So when there's fires, and we have a lot of fires here in California, eucalyptus are horrible, like they're seen in Australia. So we have a ton of eucalyptus here. There's over 600 species in Australia. Angie's just itching to go about nutrition because these guys are very picky eaters, but we do have it here. And there's probably other parts of the world that our listeners are at that have eucalyptus. So I'm going to do some eucalyptus. I'm not going to be eating any, but I will be messing with some this week and posting some stuff on social media. But yeah, just a peculiar tree, and this species is perfect for it.
Well, yeah, I think in Australia, they probably have like a symbiotic relationship. That's for sure. Because not many species want to chew on eucalyptus leaves. That's for sure.
Nope.
And the leaves are highly toxic, and the koalas get around this by having gut microbes, a gut flora, bacteria in their stomachs that can metabolize the toxins from the leaves and render it inactive, basically. And just to dork out a little bit more for my nutrition fans out there, the koalas, when their gut microbes are in their hindgut, and so they're considered hindgut fermenters. And the digestion of eucalyptus leaves, Chris, this is incredible because I know we've done a lot of retention time studies in our different nutrition labs at Texas and both here at UF. The retention time, so how long from when it goes in the koala to out the door,
poop.
Koala poop,
yeah,
right?
Poop. Yeah,
we'll be talking about here shortly, is about 100 hours in the wild and about 200 hours under human care.
That's crazy. That's a long time. That's a long time in the digestive tract.
Long time in the digestive tract.
Yeah.
And this is made possible because they have a really long cecum. So that's basically like an expansion of the first part of the large, where the small intestine meets the large intestine. And it's 200 centimeters or 80 inches long. And
this is a small animal.
Yes.
this isn't a huge, horse or something or a hoof stock. This is a 20-pound, animal.
Right.
So that is super long for them. Super long.
Well, you're very good because it's actually the largest proportion of any animal. So proportionately for their size, it's the longest and the largest. And then what they can do is large particles of these will pass through more quickly. And then in the cecum, the koala has the ability basically to select food particles that can retain longer in fermentation if need be, probably to break down more toxins. And larger particles of these will typically pass through more quickly. So it's just really fascinating, the special gut microbes that they have that can break down these toxins, and that the leaves will sit in their hind gut for that long, just trying to break down and gain energy. But what also fascinated me, Chris, is that typically when we talk about herbivores and how they gain energy from the different forms of digestion that they have, whether they're hindgut or foregut fermenters, but koalas only gain 10% of energy from this fermentation process. So it's obviously they need that 10%, but it's not super rewarding. In my opinion, but that's why they have they have like their metabolic rate is half of a typical mammal. And of course it varies depending on sexes and seasons and things like that. But it's just really interesting. And so their pellets, their poop is very high in undigested fiber, and therefore, and also protein, which you mentioned earlier in the podcast is actually a really great fertilizer for the forest floors. It's just super fascinating. And in order to do this, the koala has a special cheek teeth to grind the tough, because anybody who's ever seen a eucalyptus leaf, they're tough. They're thick leaves, right? And they can also store food in their cheek pouches. And kind of like a cow, they've been known to actually regurgitate it and re-chew it a second time if need be. So that's
yummy.
So
sounds so yummy.
Yeah, so crazy. But I think the other thing that's really important to mention, and I'm sure the keepers you talked with can probably go on for days about this, but there's hundreds of eucalyptus species in Australia, native to Australia. And yeah, the koala will eat maybe only 20 of them, but really actually only like 5. So,
yeah, and that's That's it, and that's the challenge, right? So you have over 600 species of eucalyptus trees. You can't just say go eat. No, they are very picky on the type of trees. So when you start cutting down those specific trees, you cut away their food source, and they won't survive.
Right. And researchers, they think that we as humans are just like, oh, they're just picky because they want to be picky. But researchers believe that there's actually a physiological adaptation for their pickiness. They're not just your typical kid that's like, Mom, I don't want red sauce on my noodles. I want butter. It's actually due to the toxicity level of the plant. They think that koalas can actually sniff out the toxins and determine if it's too toxic of leaf. Because of course, too, plants can vary in their toxins depending on if it's a new growth, old growth, if it's diseased, things like that. So in general, there's certain species that are less toxic and probably easier for them to digest and to feel better with. And so they will choose those over some of the other ones, which is also really incredible if you think about, I mean, I guess we've all smelled bad food before, like bad milk or bad meat or something, and been like, whoa, I'm not eating that. But to me, it must be a really refined or whatever molecule they're detecting, because to me, eucalyptus just smells like delicious menthol.
Don't eat it, please. Don't eat it,
well,
please.
And it's kind of funny because I read on some site, they're like, oh, well, do koalas get drugged out from eating eucalyptus leaves because they have such that intense smell? And the answer is no. That's koalas are not high all the time. They
may act it, but it's
they're not. I mean, they have a low metabolic rate. They're just tired. They're not high. They're tired. They don't have a lot of energy. They do all this work and then they don't really get a lot of energy from it. And so they sleep a lot because basically the eucalyptus leaves contain toxins and they're low in nutrition and high in fibrous matter. So they need to rest a lot. But with that being said, to answer my question to you in the beginning, so they eat all this eucalyptus. Do you think they smell like the cough drops or some of the aromatherapy
Maybe
oils?
their breath. I don't know. Maybe their breath. I don't know. I thought I read the males were stinky, but I don't know.
Well, the males have a gland and they rub all over trees. Cute behavior. But yes, Chris, koalas smell like eucalyptus cough drops.
Okay.
They have a very pleasant eucalyptus smell to them in general. Now, as you mentioned, males do have that strong odor because of a scent gland, and it can be musky. So it's like musk mixed with eucalyptus. It's probably actually would be a really hot selling cologne for men.
Okay, I'll try that. That or their gland, right? It's their pheromones.
But Chris, but it's also really cool because this smell or whatever acts as a natural insect repellent.
Okay. Maybe I will use it as a cologne when I'm out in Tasmania.
I always use what is it? The not chamomile, the citronella. Yeah. I use citronella a lot. I burn those candles or oils. So I'll have to try eucalyptus to see if that works.
Especially all those massive mosquitoes in Florida that like pick you up and fly you away.
Oh yes, yes, that is true. Yeah. I've learned to live in harmony with them. I'm just like, whatever, take my blood. It's all good.
Yeah, go ahead. Give me a nice welt that I get to itch for 3 days. But I mean, it's nutrition. I mean, you and I know we're kind of nutrition geeks sometimes. It drives a lot of what certain species can do. You know, when we talk about predators and now we have a herbivore that is eating a very low nutrient diet. So behavior, like I wrote, they just sleep, right? I mean, there's some cool stuff they do.
It.
Obviously, some social stuff. Yeah,
there's social stuff, right? You figured it out. That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
But they're sleeping to conserve energy, and they're pretty sedentary. So. And because of sleeping between 18 to 22 hours a day, they're pretty sedentary. They're nocturnal. So the other thing about, as you mentioned, we were visiting the San Diego Zoo, you were there during the day, I would presume, right? So if they are going to be active or when they are active, it's usually more at night. And of course, they will occasionally come down to the ground to go to another tree, or they'll lick up soil and gravel, which can help in digestion. And also it can give them calcium. And as far as social goes, they're not an extremely social animal at all. It's typically just moms and their joeys that have a relationship outside of breeding season. They'll live in loose-knit groups if there's the right amount of trees around, but only one animal per tree. Like, we don't, unless it's a mom and a joey, we're not sharing a tree, which I can highly respect that. So
yeah, give me my space.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you.
And so, but they can live in these small harems that's led by a single male, all individual trees. But yeah, they're pretty much asocial. And some researchers have quoted, I love this for all my introvert friends out there. They're very asocial, and they can spend, on average, they spend about 15 minutes a day on social behaviors.
That's about it.
Yeah. So
I think you almost said social media. I was like, what?
No.
Right. Yeah.
So just social behaviors. And so, yeah, they're pretty much extrovert or introverted. Nothing wrong with that. Right. And depending on where they live, they can have a home range of 1.5 to 3 hectares if they're a male, or about 1 hectare if they're a female. So it just depends on the size of the forest as far as, since they have these fixed home ranges, as you mentioned earlier, when you knock those down, it's hard for them just to regroup and go find another area, especially if there's not woods anywhere around. And yes, although they do sleep a lot, and they probably will be sleeping when you go visit them at a zoological park, they do have a lot of personality. I've known keepers that have worked with them. Of course, you interviewed some, but they say that each koala has its own personality. Some are easier to get along with, some can be more stubborn, and they make several different vocalizations, from snores, well, because they sleep a lot, but to bellows, to grunts, to squeaks if they're little juveniles, or screams. And the other thing too with this personality, Chris, is koalas make numerous facial expressions. They snarl, they wail, they'll curl their upper lip and point their ears forward. Sometimes they retract their lips. They will bring their lips forward and raise their ears when agitated. So I need some koala keepers out there to send me pictures of this, because I love them for being as cute as they are, and for sleeping as much as they do, and for the fact that they can detoxify eucalyptus leaves. But thinking of different koala facial expressions makes me happy. So I need to see some of those. But they definitely, they have this teddy bear appearance, but they're complex critters, and and then for the keepers or people that work with them under human care, they sometimes they can be challenging because of their personalities and attitudes, and of course their dietary needs. Definitely not a pet, of course not. And they're definitely worth saving, so we can learn more about these subtle intricacies that I think are worthy to figure out how they've evolved to be such awesome rock stars that just hang out in trees eating eucalyptus leaves. I mean, it's pretty darn cool, in my opinion. And it's really important. And they're just such an icon to Australia.
Yeah. And I mean, every species has some sort of social behavior. I mean, even insects have some social behaviors.
Oh, they have a lot, like ants and bees. Yeah.
So it's interesting that, in those 6 hours they're awake, there's a lot going on besides they're just stuffing their faces. Screw you.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You just got to capture that 15 minutes of social behavior, because I bet there is a lot. They're making some faces. They're making some noises. They're busy.
Reminds me, Angie, of all the studies you made me do with you, and social behaviors and equids and hoofstock, and how much I loved it, but 70% of the day they're just eating, and how boring it was. Studying koalas, social behavior, that 15 minutes.
But think about that 15 minutes is like Emmy winning, like award winning time, where you just get to be there in awe and say, like, I saw that female make this face that is super cute, and then send us a picture of it.
That's why we have cameras today, and we can observe them from afar and then watch the video. So before you get to repro, Angie, I want to see if I can stump you.
Stump the chump.
Because
let her rip.
I got stumped.
I'm feeling on fire tonight, so we'll see.
Okay. I will drop the mic and just walk off if you get this, because I screwed
that
it
means
up.
It's hard.
And I'm a repro expert, and this was a veterinarian, big interview coming up on wildlife and zoo vets. So been requested quite a bit, and we should be announcing this interview in a couple weeks. So he asked me, and this is a good cocktail question, so people can write this down. Unless you're driving, don't write this down. Just try to remember it. All right. What breeds only once a year during a full moon for 3 days in August?
Is it a mammal?
I'm not going to.
Oh,
it's your guess.
You not answering makes me a sea turtle.
No, that's a good guess, though. It is in the ocean.
With the moon, with the ocean.
It is in the ocean. Yeah.
Oh, it is the ocean.
Yeah.
Did I get further? Okay, I'm done.
So that's much better than me. I said
yes. That just made my whole night. I love it.
he said his wife, and I know who his wife is, and I was like, rhinos, like an idiot.
Sharks.
So mad at me. No. You wouldn't even think these are alive, and they're alive. And the gametes gets
coral.
It's a major spawn. Yeah. Oh, okay. Good night. Chris is gone.
Chris,
good night.
You
good
trained
night.
me. Like, it's a compliment to you if I do better than you, right? Isn't that right? Like
I'm done. Podcast over.
If I get the job in San Diego, like that means you were a good mentor. If I get these questions right, it means you did a good job. And I'm smarter.
Yes, you are smarter. Oh my gosh, it is coral. I not in a million years would I guess
I should have gotten. Well, you gave me lots of hints, but yeah, the moon, the ocean.
Yeah, coral. If during a full moon they spawn, I know you said we have to do coral.
I've been talking about coral for months now. I just need to just get on that.
It's on our radar. Mm-hmm. It's on our radar. We will dive into the literature because coral, 33% of all corals are heading towards extinction.
Well, and if anybody out there listening still, if you're still listening, God bless you, first of all. And second of all, if you know any coral expert, email us.
Yeah. Because
or link us up.
Yeah, coral is like especially Great Barrier Reef right there in Oz.
Oh, in Florida,
disintegrating.
Ours are getting
Florida, yeah, bleaching and just all the stuff that's happening. So he said coral. I was like, I was like such an idiot. I'm gonna cut out the rhino part. So I was so stupid. But I was like, Angie won't know this. I'm gonna ask her. She knows it, of course.
Kind of halfway, half there.
Half. Yeah, it was Teamwork. Good though. Good job. Teamwork. Okay. All right.
Well, speaking about repro and talking about koalas, I'm not sure how we were talking about coral, but now we're talking about koalas. So koalas are polygamous. They're not very picky, and they are seasonal breeders. And births are going to take place in the middle of spring in Australia through summer into early autumn. So basically October to May, right? Because they're on the lower half. They're on the down under.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was so smart. What's that called?
Down under? They're on the other side of the equator, so the southern hemisphere.
Southern hemisphere for $1,000, Alex. Yes. Okay. So because they're in the southern hemisphere, right? So their summer and spring is going to be basically October to May. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's our fall, our winter
our fall
here in
and
the
winter
northern
is going to be
hemisphere.
their spring and summer, right?
Holy. Yeah, so right now it's May here. It's still cold in California, for whatever reason, but it's almost summer here, and then it's almost winter there.
Gotcha. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. And so during the breeding season, October through February, adult males are actually going to be very active at night. That might be a good time to go watch them. They are fighting with other males, ejecting their rivals, getting them out of their area, and seeing which females are receptive. Well, and during the breeding season, it might be a fun time to go out there with your audio recorder too, because the males will make loud bellowing calls. They do like harsh inhalations followed by growling and all sorts of just fun things to basically tell the other males that they're tough and they're going to get the female. Whereas females, they make some vocalizations, but it's going to be more of sometimes wailing or distress if they're being harassed by a male. and just not quite as vocal, of course, as the males are. But with the females being seasonally polyestrous, so multiple estresses during their season, their cycle is going to be about 27 to 30 days, and they usually breed about once every year. A female is not going to become seasonally active until she's about 2 years old. And similar for a male, but a male is not going to actually be able to score any females, if you will, until he's about 4 or 5 years old. But when females are in estrus, this is a behavior I don't know why. Behavior just makes me giggle, I think because I relate it to people so much. But anyways, when a female's in estrus, so high in estrogen and receptive to a male, she tends to hold her head farther back than usual. Okay, if you can picture that, she's in a tree. I just picture. And so when a female is in estrus, she'll hold her head back further than normal. So I picture her in a tree, just leaning her head back more than normal. And she'll sometimes display tremors and spasms. But researchers, I don't know why that just makes me laugh, but researchers don't know if males can actually recognize this or if they're more going off of pheromones or chemical signs, but it basically is still a signal, or the female's trying to signal to him that like she's receptive. So I just think that's a funny signal, just leaning the head back and having a little tremor. But once male and female do copulate, the gestation period is only 25 to 35 days. So very short, right?
Very short, very short.
But it makes sense because litters of usually only one joey are born, but twins have been reported. But just very common to a marsupial, when they're born, they are itty bitty, less than 0.5 grams. I used to describe a joey when it's born for kangaroos as like a little jelly bean with basically
a little mouth.
Yeah, like enough arm buds to like, because obviously the joey is born from the vagina, but then it has to, like a little jelly bean basically, has to like crawl up into the pouch and attach to the nipple. And the koala has 2 nipples inside the pouch. But this little itty bitty thing that's just, I don't even know how it moves, right? It's just this pink little jelly bean, I guess. So very, very underdeveloped, I guess is what I'm trying to get to. But because of that, the joeys in a koala will stay in the pouch for 5 to 7 months feeding on milk. And what's really interesting, and it makes sense, but koalas have one of the lowest milk energy production rates in proportion to its body size than any mammal. And it makes sense because their diets are so low in nutrition.
Low,
right?
yeah.
So
yeah.
But they make up for it by lactate. So they lactate for up to 12 months, which is really long for a small mammal, having that kind of motherly bond and sacrifice, right? For offspring. So, but what's really cool, and actually Rob Lang, I've got to give him a shout out from Underdone Comics. He posted this little nugget of information about koalas in one of his brilliant comics, and I'm sure we'll link it when we post this. And so as the joeys grow in the pouch, they're drinking this milk, but they're getting bigger and bigger, and they might start popping their head out and things like that. So before they actually start eating the leaves, which is really cute behavior, it's been reported, it's almost like they're bobbing for apples because they don't really know like how to eat the leaves and how to get them and stuff. So that's super cute. But before they do that, they have to train their digestive system, and they have to load up microbes the same way. It's in pop culture now, popular press to take probiotics and fix your gut microbes. Well, joeys have evolved their own unique strategy to do that.
So yummy, Angie. Just so yummy. I knew you were just going to die when you got to talk about this.
Yes, and it actually has a name. So koala joeys feed on their mother's pap. Well, pap sounds like a nice English word, right? Like pap.
Yes.
Honey,
okay.
Please, sir, I want some more.
No.
Do you want some more?
You don't want pap.
I would love more pap.
Nope. Well, nope.
So what pap is basically kind of like a pasty soup that's made from the mom's droppings, so her poop. But it's a very protein-rich mix of poop that is full of the gut microbes that the joeys need to basically jumpstart their digestive system. Their cecum they need to load their cecum up so when they do start eating these toxic plants that they don't die. It's really important. And so and I saw a video of it. I could put it on our show notes or have Chris put it on our show notes. They basically just lap up their mom's fecal paste pap stuff. And of course, people have taken video of this, like zooming in on it, right? But it's an important behavior, and I think in my mind, Chris, because I'm such a nutrition dork, it actually makes them more cute to me. Because as I always tell people, why I love working with herbivores is chewed up grass, not a problem. I'll pick up manure for days. I'll walk barefoot in it. I don't care. It's just chewed up leaves. Carnivore poop, stinky, nasty. Forget about it. Dog poop.
Yeah, it's nasty.
So a little pap never hurt anybody, and it really helped. It really helped the joey. So that's my fun cocktail fact, Chris.
There you go. Not the corals, but pap. But they're, and I know somebody who studies microbes, they've looked at the evolutionary history. Like, imagine passing on those microbes from generation to generation. So looking at their DNA and tracking that would be kind of
I mean,
cool.
So koalas in my book are great mothers, especially for a marsupial. They nurse them for up to 12 months and they let them eat their pap. So bless their hearts.
And phenomenal fathers that are never around.
They make really cool vocalizations during breeding season. They get really active. So, and they're cute as all get out. Even I want to see an aggressive koala face. That also would make me happy. Like, how bad could it be? Right? Like, how aggressive could it be? Because they're so stinking cute.
Yeah. Oh, they are. Now, okay, looking at conservation, a couple things. So it's if you go look at IUCN, and that's who Angie and I always turn to when we look at numbers, because they are the authority, the universal authority on our planet. They have, anywhere from 100,000 to 500,000, but they go middle road and say about 300,000 koalas left. Now, this is as of 2012. They do recognize population declines as severe as 80%. Now, since this last census, Australia has gone through severe drought and suffered some more habitat loss.
Right. What year was this again?
2012 was our last assessment.
Yeah, that's wild.
So when the Australia Koala Foundation comes out with their report, they have actually spent millions of dollars looking into this. And just to give you some estimates that they have, in Queensland, they estimate anywhere from 12 to 23,000. Again, that's the northeastern part of Australia. Going south to New South Wales, they think 11 to 16,000. Going to the southern coast of eastern Australia and Victoria, they have upwards of 27,000. And then South Australia, that's just over, they have 18,000. Now, that's the high. They have lows, again, as low as 43,000. So, are they functionally extinct? Some experts say no. Some populations definitely are, but not all of them, they believe, are functionally extinct. But this foundation is saying, hey, we have the research. So I think there needs to be some more investigation in this. They also are pushing the Koala Protection Act. It's ready to go. They're fighting to protect this iconic animal in Australia, and we're behind you. We're behind you 100%. We think, your national symbol needs your love and protection, because Australia's in trouble, Angie. I mean, as far as climate change, one of the things we do know, the climate scientists have researched and shown that the temperatures are rising quicker at the poles. So Australia, in the southern hemisphere, it's not near the equator as much. I mean, North Australia is closer, but the portion where koalas live, especially in South Australia and Victoria, temperatures in Australia have risen 1 degree Celsius or 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit in the last 100 years. This is scary. The prediction by 2090, in another 70 years, they think it's going to jump 5 degrees Celsius or 9 degrees Fahrenheit. That's insane. That's insane.
We had 100 here for the fourth time ever.
Yeah.
But the first time in May ever. Like usually it's in other later months of the summer.
Yeah, the climate is wacky. And 2018 was the worst year for drought in the history of Australia. So Australia is suffering. The bushfires down there, they're longer seasons, especially in koala habitat. So it's been just a huge, huge challenge. These animals need their support. The government needs to get behind wildlife conservation, period, to protect your endearing, loving, worldwide loving. People love your animals from around the world in Australia. Work harder to protect your wildlife, please, please. And we'll do our part. But Angie has a couple organizations that are working hard to help koalas.
Yes, Chris, I do. I have a couple. I'm going to give a big shout out here in a second to, as you've previously mentioned, the Australia Koala Foundation. But first, I want to start a little closer to home, to your neck of the woods, and give a shout out to the San Diego Zoo for several.
Thank you.
For several reasons, besides they're awesome and they do awesome things. But just to touch on what they do for koalas, as today the San Diego Zoo has the largest colony of koalas outside of Australia, with 20 living at the zoo and more than 30 on loan to other accredited zoos in the U.S. and in Europe. And the San Diego Zoo is always striving to learn more about koalas, both koalas under their care, but then also wild koalas. They have researchers studying a group of koalas on St. Bees Island off the eastern coast of Australia. And they're trying to learn as much as possible about how these koalas need to find food and shelter and how they communicate, with hopes of putting all these pieces together to learn more about their breeding biology. And they work with the Australian government in order to get this done. And the government's now declared that area a national park to help further protect the koalas that live there. So, just working overseas with foreign governments to help conserve wild koalas, and not only conserve them, but learn more about them to help better conserve them in the future. And of course, at the zoo, they're always trying to figure out how to improve their husbandry and diets and, of course, breeding. And they're doing a pretty good job at it because koalas can be a little bit fussy eaters and sometimes difficult to breed. And the San Diego Zoo is making great strides here in the U.S. at figuring out more about their biology. So kudos to them. Check them out. Obviously, like them on Facebook, Instagram feed. You'll be very happy with me.
And just a shout out to Candace, Lindsay, and Jenny, who took time after work to come talk to me in San Diego and have such an awesome interview. So please listen to that on Thursday. It was a pleasure, and they go more into what San Diego's doing, which is just amazing.
Yeah.
So thank you.
No, it's super awesome. And the other group I really want to highlight, which we've talked a little bit about in the pod, is the Australian Koala Foundation. You can find them on social media at Australia Koala Foundation. And then on the web, they can be found at www.savethekoala.com. And when you go to their website or even their Facebook page, they have a really potent saying, no tree, no me. And so the Australia Koala Foundation, or AKF, it's the main principal nonprofit, non-government organization, and they are dedicated to the effective management and conservation of koala in its natural habitat. So they basically want to refine and update what's considered the Koala Habitat Atlas for wild koalas. And one of their goals, too, is to get the Koala Protection Act enacted to ensure that koalas and their habitats are protected. And I highly recommend, Chris will put the link on the show notes. I highly recommend checking out their website and, of course, their social media. But their website is so informative as far as where koalas can be found, their sightings or habitats, how you can help protect and save the koala, especially for our listeners in Australia. They do a lot of research as far as koala conservation and biology. And for those that live locally that want to get more involved, they have what they call the Koala Army, which is basically campaigns and where they'll keep you updated on current campaigns and strategies to help basically conserve the koala. And looking through their website, they have blogs and they have a ton of helpful options of what you can do, a place to donate and or get involved. So I just think that it's a really important group that's bringing awareness to the koalas' plight in Australia. And as Chris mentioned previously, they're involved with some of these newer numbers that are pretty devastating, but needs to be told and needs to be made aware that these guys aren't doing so well.
No, and then on their website, which I thought was really cool when I was looking at it, Angie, was they do have like citizen science, where you can report koala sightings, which I thought was really cool. So for our friends in Australia.
It's a really cool website. When we talk about trees, right? Like I planted a tree recently this weekend, but it's so awesome. They've developed a guide of which trees you can plant, depending on what area you're in, to help koalas. So, I mean, they've done their homework and they know all things koala, and they're fighting really hard for them. And koalas need a voice, right? They do. They need a big voice, and just like anywhere else, when I say vote with your dollar or things like that, if government doesn't back species protection, which here in the U.S. it did with like the bald eagle and the American alligator, and the species were able to really recover. And unfortunately, our current administration's undoing some of that, but that's a different story for a different day. So I think that's what this group is trying to really promote too, as far as getting governments involved that will make not only these protections a top priority, but will actually do something about it if they're not followed, right? Because a lot of times there's no follow through if nobody's paying attention, if there's no watchdogs.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's good. And we applaud them. So conservation tip this week, Angie, it's again focused on climate change, reducing our carbon footprint. So we've said this again, and I, in a pod long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, Star Wars, but it was trying to eat less meat. And Michael Pollan wrote, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. So here's 4 things you can do to make your diet more eco-friendly, I guess, and reduce its climate impact. Again, one thing Angie and I talked about is eat meat-free meals. Meat-free Monday, meatless Monday. That's something you should really try to implement. I saw a video this week on Instagram of them filling up balloons with methane from cows. It was a lab in the United States. They were measuring how much methane a cow produces, roughly 500 liters of methane per day, which is going up in the atmosphere. It's not just methane that goes into cow production. That's the thing. It's also the transportation, the feed costs, all the chemicals, things like that make a huge imprint on carbon. So just try to reduce the amount of meat you eat. If you're vegan, God bless you, or vegetarian.
It's fun to try new recipes. That's what's been really good for us.
But if we can help reduce demand a little bit, because that's
that's why. Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. Like it's being encouraged to think outside the box and try new recipes. And then you find that you don't miss the meat most of the time.
Yeah, as much.
There's tons of alternatives out there for sure.
Right. And then, this one, buy organic and local whenever possible. I mean, organic, you can go up and down. This isn't a debate on organic versus non-organic. What is true is organic uses less pesticides equals less fossil fuels being used. Okay.
I say buy local. That's my stick.
There you go. Buy local. That was my next one. We're on tune tonight, except the coral. You knew it. Grow your own or buy local, because less transportation costs, support local farmers, local grocers, things like that. And then the huge one is don't waste food, right? We waste food.
I know.
So, I think part of it too is when you cook, again, you can save extras and eat it the next night or the night after that, but plan your meals better. Like I went to a restaurant the other night. I couldn't eat all of it. I just couldn't. I didn't want to, and I just couldn't eat it all. And I'm like, this is such a waste. It's such a waste of food. And it's rare that I go out to restaurants now, but it's still, they give you such big portions. And I'm like, this is such a waste. And it's just so much food's being wasted. And I think if we can reduce the amount we eat, again, and it's all these little steps. It's not just one. It's all these little steps will add up. And that's what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing it in Instagram now. I had my toothbrush demo the other day, showing you to save water. That's a little one. But the more we do these things, it's going to be making a big impact. So,
yes, my little trick has been to freeze things. So if I open up a jar of salsa to make some fancy guacamole, but I'm not like a salsa verde, green salsa, I won't use the whole jar. So I just throw it in the freezer till the next time. Or cilantro, I freeze that. My spinach, if it's starting to think about going old, I throw it in the freezer and then I use it in smoothies. So the freezer has been a really big help for me saving or fruit. If fruit's starting to think about going bad, especially berries and things like that, I just throw them in the freezer. And then that way they can have a second life, either in a smoothie or yogurt or something else. And that's been very helpful because, of course, I like to eat healthy. So I eat a lot of fruits and vegetables. But especially here living in Florida, my bananas go rotten within a day or two.
In like 3 days. Yeah.
And so, so the freezer's been very, 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 very beneficial to save food.
That's a good tip
for me.
It's a good tip.
That's my tip.
Good tip. Okay. So in the beginning, I asked you, why do we call them koala bear? Are they a bear? No, obviously they're not. They're not a member of the Ursidae. They're so far removed from Ursidae, it's not even funny. But their scientific name, Phascolarctos cinereus, actually means ash gray pouched bear, which was named in 1816. So it looked like a bear. They said, "Oh, it's a bear." It's not. It's not a bear.
To give those researchers back in the day a little bit of credit, or a lot of credit, right? They're discovering species. Yeah. Well, they weren't discovering them; they were rediscovering them. Obviously, the native people have known about all these things, but it does have a cute bear face, so I can see. Yeah, okay. And it's in a tree. Okay. I don't know. Bears aren't really in trees. I don't know. Yes, they were confused.
It's not a bear. It's a koala.
It's not a bear.
It's a koala. It's a koala. Our us friends are screaming at the radio or wherever they're listening to this. It's a koala, period. But you can call it koala bear because it's cute. Okay. Sue us. All right. Anyways, thank you. Send this podcast for those that are sharing. Thank you. We love you. We're growing our audience. We didn't even talk about our rating. We'll talk about that next week. We were rated one of the top podcasts and animals in the world, which was awesome.
Sure. And if anybody has any connections to the Australia Zoo, hit Chris up. He needs some connections there. Yeah.
I think Lee's going to hook me up, but anybody else, I think I'm making a trip there after I go see the Tassie tiger in the outback somewhere. But really, Tassie Devils, I'm going to see this year for sure. Anyways,
awesome.
Bye, Ange.
That was amazing. You're amazing. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time and your passion. You are our conservation heroes. Without you guys, this podcast would go bust. And spreading our message is what we can all do to help wildlife in some little way, shape, and form. So share this with a friend, and let's get more conservation heroes on board. And let's all make small steps together can be a big leap for wildlife.
Listen, learn, share. Join the movement at allcreaturespod.com.